how to actually use agents for B2B lead gen. Some context on me. So I've spoken to about 100 companies about their GTM, just kind of looking about what their setup is, how they're using agents, a lot of B2B companies, but some B2C. For some context as well, so I was actually on the founding team of Camel AI, they're the first agent framework. Before that, I was doing like a marketing agency where I was like implementing AI systems for people. This is just to say OpenClaw runs my lead gen on autopilot, and anyone that doesn't do that is doing it wrong. I'm gonna say this is a bit of a lie. I think this is kind of the sentiment I see on X, and I see a lot of other people where they're kind of selling this idea of like fully automated agentic systems. And this isn't to say that agents aren't good, lead gen and all these kind of things, like they are really good. And you can see from 2025 to 2026, there's been a big uptake in them. But I think my talk today and a lot of the things I want to go over, for them to work well and for you to actually use them, there's like a lot of setup involved, and I think there's a lot of understanding of how these systems work. So a bit of a agenda, I'm going to go over some sort of prerequisite, so like, okay, what I would have expected you guys to sort of have to sort of go into this. How do we make your GTM AI ready? How do we find leads with agents? How do we do inbound lead generation, outbound lead generation, GTM engines, world models, and some sort of conclusion? These were some terms I sent out before the workshop started. Feel free to look back over that after. I think the main thing is I'm going to show you some pretty cool systems, and I think there's a lot of like ways to do like automated outbound and lead gen. But I think a really key thing is just don't be a dick. I think you can kind of just spam 1 million people if you want to spam 1 million people. But yeah, just use these systems for good. Cool. And like disclaimer, so I'll be talking about a mix of a lot of tools. So I'll be talking about tools that I built myself. I'll be talking about ones with Claude that other companies. The only one that I built myself is the scaling intelligence one, but I think the same practices and the same way I'm using my tools and these other tools, they can be applied to any kind of harness, really, in sort of some regards. Number one is the basics of making your AI GTM ready. A really key thing is speed to lead. So I think anyone in GTM kind of understands the faster you respond to a lead, the more likely you're going to get ROI from that, and the more likely that you're going to get good results. So I think what agents are particularly good at, they're good at like sifting through data, and they're good at sort of like just sort of telling you, okay, which ones are the most prioritized ones to reply to, and then as well, like how can you reply to them faster. So that's a really key thing. I think another really key thing is something people calling AI brains, because the AI is really only as smart as the context you give them. So there's like a few different ways you can kind of build some level of like a brain for these kind of systems. So one part is like a CRM. I think most people have a CRM. Another part is like a CDP. So this is like a customer data platform. So this is how you can kind of unify all your marketing data across various touch points. And then the last thing is a context graph. So a context graph is basically, it's like a big understanding of your company. It kind of stores the decisions, and it's kind of good for agents to kind of have that. So they have like a lot of understanding about your brand. And then I think kind of once you have that data like well set up, you can basically define what a high intent lead is. So a high intent lead for you might be, okay, they've visited your pricing page, they've hired for this relevant role, they've made this post on social media. This is the highest intent lead for you, and that's a tier 1 lead, right? So a tier 2 lead might be a mix of that, but maybe they made a post which wasn't quite as converted, and then tier 3, and then unqualified, etc. So the main thing we're going to do for agents is we're going to give them this sort of tier system of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, unqualified, so we know exactly how the agent should react to the sort of priority of the lead. And then one thing that I've kind of built out myself, and I see some people building, is what we're calling a brand graph. And like a brand graph is kind of similar to a content graph in a lot of ways, but it's kind of storing your offers, your identity, your sort of firmographics, and kind of organizing this in like a really nice way. So you can kind of see how we've built this out custom, where it's kind of like, okay, like what are my offers? So then when an agent is sort of doing research on your ICP, it can kind of pull from what your offer is and kind of have that context. I see some people use Notion, some people use Obsidian, but really if you want something really robust, I think you should really build something custom. Cool. So now we sort of know how to score a lead. How do we find these high intent leads? I think there's this word like lead gen, prospecting kind of gets used interchangeably, but what I'm going to focus on today is more so on, I'm going to do some prospecting, but I'm focusing more so on lead gen. And I guess I'm defining that as attracting people that might be interested. And another really key term, I'm sure a lot of you would have heard of it, is called signals. So this is like data that kind of says who's in the market and who's ready to be marketed to. So like, what are the best signals? So I think there's a few different types of signals. So there's first party signals, second party signals, third party signals. Some examples here are like CRM data. Again, like, did they use your product? Second, like, did they engage with your ads? Have they liked your post? And third, my favorite, is like social signals, like, have they made a post which kind of links to your offering? So an example of like a more custom system would be something like this, where it's actually monitoring, okay, like, it's monitoring all these different subreddits for something that's relevant to my offering. So you can see here, it's weighting the ICPs, it's scraping all the Reddits, it's kind of understanding, okay, this might be relevant for your offering because they've said X, Y, and Z. And I'll skip a little bit here so you can kind of see some sort of rubric here where it's saying, hey, like, these guys have really high buying intent because they've said this. Cool. The next part I'm going to go over is inbound lead generation. So this is something where you build a lead magnet, and if anyone's not familiar, it's just something that attracts leads. So like, technically we're in a lead magnet somewhat now, but the sort of idea is just sort of giving something free for value to sort of attract people to it. There's a really good Alex Hormozi clip where he kind of breaks down the sort of 3 types of lead magnets. So it's like, do you reveal a problem? Do you give it a free trial? Or do you give some sort of step in a process? So an example flow for this might be, so I'll say find a problem to reveal. So sometimes what we do is like a free AI audit where we actually understand their processes and try and make them more native. Then create some sort of resource around that. You can promote that through organic content, ads. Then you do some sort of automated signal gathering, like, did they like, did they comment? I think the most familiar one that people might see is comment this word to get it. But there are like other set of signals that are more nuanced that you can do with sophisticated scraping. And then from there, you update the CRM and you basically add it to something we're calling the intention queue. So this is like, if there's a smart enough system that has an understanding of your whole GTM, there's gonna be a lot of stuff it needs to give you to sort of review. So a attention queue can be through a Slack bot, it could be through a dashboard. It's just listing out the things as a human you need to do. So for LinkedIn content, so how do we know content's good? How do we know a lead magnet content's good? So something that I've been doing a lot of research into for a long time is this kind of like idea of recipes. So you can use agents, and then how we use agents is to kind of have some sort of general idea of how certain types of posts tend to perform on certain channels. So you can do that with Apify, you can use the X API, but there's other ways that we've done it as well. The next thing I want to go over is outbound lead generation. So this is some sort of like automated outreach. So how do we take signals? Do we qualify them? Do some sort of stakeholder mapping? Do AI personalized copywriting? Do multi-channel outreach, and then update the CRM to then be added to the attention queue. So that is a system that works very well, especially if there are signals where it's scraping social media. This is another example of like a harness doing this kind of system. So depending on signals that are coming in, you can basically say, hey, like, I want to create content that kind of attracts those signals. So you can see here, kind of have a graph of all the people within that sort of ICP, and then you can create the LinkedIn content that kind of matches it. The next thing I want to go over is GTM engines and autonomy. I'm a massive believer, and I think that like if anyone's worked with AI systems, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. You need to update the system, you need to maintain the system, the better data that you can give to it. So what we're doing is we're creating Slack chat channels where our GTM engine kind of picks up on the things that we're actually doing, and it updates the system, it learns, it kind of grows over time with us. Another really key thing that we're working towards is something called governed autonomy. So it's like, how do you create guardrails and how do you create some sort of framework for the system to understand, okay, what can it do and what can't it do? So an example is when I said at the start, don't be a dick. Well, hey, your agent might send a million DMs to loads of people saying, please buy my product. You probably don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So I think you need to have systems that can kind of guard around this, because I've seen examples of companies where they do these kind of things and it probably hurts the brand more than any leads it brings in. So The sixth stage of this is something we're calling, well, they're called world models. So an example of how we do things is we just scrape a lot of data. So this is the internal little data we're talking about, and the external data. Then you basically simulate the agent actions. So based on various types of data, which then what steps can the agent make to basically get the next leads. Like, this is a bit complex. I think yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions on this part. And then the sort of next part of this, and again, like, this is like further on in your journey, is like sequencing. So kind of building things like similar to chess computers about how can you simulate the next best move. So my big conclusion in using AI agents for B2B lead gen is don't automate. Really try and do the process manually and then scale that up after. The second part is you need a solid data foundation, and this is super important. Like, if you don't have a data foundation, nothing's gonna work. Number 3 is measure everything back to ROI. Like, really understand, okay, like if my agent is running 24/7, it's burning all these tokens, it's sending all these messages, how many leads is it getting, right? Like, I think it's very tempting to get in this mindset of feeling like a developer and feeling productive when you're really just at a casino and the slot machine is just cursor. And then the fourth part to this is there are levels to this, right? So like, if you have an agent set up and you build it, you vibe code and it does one task, like you're not AI native, quote unquote, there are levels to this. I've spoken to many companies, and the most dangerous thing I can see a company doing is saying they're AI native because their team uses ChatGPT or their team does this. I think you really want to not bury your head in the sand and feel like you've just checked a box to become AI native. I think really understand what's out there. I think my shield is, if you want any systems like this for your team, I build custom ones, and we have some sort of SaaS products that basically find everyone in your ICP, reach out to them, and then do some very intelligent segmenting. Feel free to book a call.